What's going on, guys? My name is Andrew Schillman, aka Knights Before Bishops, and welcome to my chess YouTube channel. On this channel, we're going to be focusing on educational and entertaining chess content for beginners and intermediate players. So, we're going to be taking a look at stuff like openings and gambits, developing video game plans, endgame studies with rook, king, and pawn, minor pieces, everything in between. Now we're also going to be doing some game analysis. Take a look at some of my own games and other GM games that I find have some key moments that are instructional and can help you win some of your own games even. Um, so in today's video, I want to take a look at one of my own games. I played against a title player, and I thought I had some key moments that I think we can take something out of it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the video. Okay, so today's game is featuring a blitz game I played on chess.com against a national master from Portugal. It was a Sicilian defense, a closed Sicilian position, which ended up being fairly open, honestly, and it ended up being very tactical. I think it has a lot of instructive moments. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So I played e4. He played c5. The Sicilian defense. Played knight c3 here. Obviously, there's also you can play moves like knight f3. And they can play all kinds of moves here. They can play d6. They can play g6. They can play knight c3 or knight c6. And the idea of this is we typically try to go for d4 here. And after takes, there's all kinds of moves here. There's tons of different variations that you can play as black and white. And so that's why I typically try to stay away from this. And I also recommend beginners do not go for these lines as well because there is just so much theory and so much to learn. If you have that kind of time to learn all that, then I guess try and go for it. But I do not recommend it. And for that reason, I don't even play it myself. I play the move knight c3 against the Sicilian, which is more of a system-based approach um, that is just much easier to follow and much easier to play with. So he played here. I go bishop b5, and the idea of this move is if given the chance, we want to take this knight and damage his pawn structure because typically he tries to play on the queen side with a6 and b5, a6, b5, b4. So if we can damage his queen side pawn structure, that's just going to be more beneficial for us. So he plays g6. He allows us to do that. They can also typically play knight d4 here, and we usually back up with the bishop. But that's kind of a whole line in itself. Maybe we'll cover that a different day. So he played g6, and we're happy to take here. He takes back with the d pawn. D3 is a move just to stop the immediate c4. If given the option, Black would like to play c4 here because he wants to get rid of his double pawns and exchange it for a pawn on our d file. And if he does, for instance, let's just say I played d3 and he got to play this and I didn't take back. If he gets to play takes, now we have a backwards d pawn that's super weak and it's an easy target for him. That's not good for us. That's not what we want. Um, so we played d3 to stop that. So if he did play it, we're just going to take that pawn. He plays bishop g7. We play f4. F4 is a very key move in these lines, these close Sicilians. A lot of times we're going to try to play for f5 if given the opportunity, or even sometimes even e5. So we kind of keep our options open with that. He plays queen c7. I'm developing my other knight. He plays bishop g4 here. So bishop g4 is actually a bit of an inaccuracy because typically in these lines, black wants to play b6, bishop a6, and try to play for c4, like we talked about earlier. So if he can get c4 in with his bishop over here, it's gonna create a weakness, and it's gonna activate his bishop, and it's gonna be controlling some key squares, um, some key light squares that we have. So I castle. He plays e5. Now I question this bishop. What does it want to do? Play h3, attack this bishop, and it has to make a decision now. Is it going to go back or is it going to trade? If he trades, we're going to take back, and we're going to have, he's not going to have the two bishops anymore, so he doesn't have that advantage. And he's going to potentially have some weak light squares. So you got to think whenever you give up one of your bishops, you got to think, is that going to weaken that color complex's squares? So if I give up my light square bishop, or my light square is going to be okay. Um, it typically becomes even more relevant if, like, for instance, if he got rid of this dark square bishop and we kept ours, then his dark squares are going to be even more vulnerable because we have a bishop that can attack the dark squares, and he doesn't have one that can defend it. So that's something you got to tell yourself whenever you're giving up bishops for knights, for instance. So this is just a favorable trade for us. Um, we're happy to get that, and here we play f5. Um, so the idea of f5 here is to kind of lock in this dark square bishop, make it weaker. So if we take here, this is not what you guys want to do. This is not what we want to do. It's not what you guys want to do either. Because when you start playing moves like this, you're just activating pieces. So when you have the option to exchange or to capture a material from your opponent, think about, are they going to be able to capture back? And then is that going to improve their position? So a lot of times, for especially in the opening, if if your opponent gives you the option to take a pawn and they get to develop a piece, and take it back, that's usually worth for you. So you want to be the one that they capture and you develop a piece. So for instance, let's say I just made some random move here. If he takes here, I get to develop my bishop with tempo on his queen. So this is favorable for us. So that's just one kind of key idea you guys want to look out for in some of your games. Let's see. So that's not what was played. I played f5. He plays f6 to kind of stop me from playing f6. So for instance, if he plays knight e7, we can just play f6 ourselves here, and now we're forking two pieces, and we're gonna win material here. So that's a move he wants to stop. So what he did was he played f6 himself, and here I noticed there was a tactic. So I can take take back and play queen g4, and that's going to create a fork between his king and his pawn. So you always want to keep a lookout for captures and checks in your opponent's position. Checks are very forcing moves that your opponent has to respond to immediately. So they're very powerful. So don't just give checks just randomly, but if there's a check that can pick up material, you always want to keep an eye out for those kind of things. So what I did here was I played bishop e3 first to be able to target this pawn, and I would like to have him play b6 here. And the reason I want him to play b6 is because it creates something called what we call a hook. And a hook is a point in his position that we can target with our own pawns to be able to weaken his position even more. So if he plays b6 here, now that gives us an option of playing like a4, a5, and trading on this b6 square. And that would open up our rook and open up his king even more, which is just beneficial for us. Um, so I think that's actually what happened in the game. I played bishop e3, he plays b6. And here I go for the tactic I just mentioned earlier. He takes back. I play queen g4, which forks his king and the pawn. So he has to he can move his king or he can defend, block. Either way, we're going to be capturing that pawn. Knight h6. I think his idea here is he just wants to develop this knight. He couldn't go to e7 here, which would be a more natural square for the knight because it would be attacking our queen. But the problem is if he goes here, we just capture this bishop. And the reason is right now this queen is defending the bishop. So if he blocks that rank, which his queen is defending the bishop, now we can just capture for free. So you want to always make sure, like, what move are you going to make? How does that change the position? How does that change what pieces are defending which pieces. So I take, he plays knight h6, which keeps an eye on this bishop, which is good. And here we start our pawn storm on the king side here. Or, well, sorry, on the queen side. Um, so if given the chance, I would love to play a5 and trade here, and then have this rook open up on his king. It's just it cuts off more squares available to the king, and it gives us some entry points to his king. So you always want to keep an eye out for ideas where you can start weakening his king position, and yeah, yeah. So let's see. He played a5 here. A5 is still good for us because he's pushing pawns near his king. So typically, you want to avoid pushing pawns near your king. As a general rule of thumb, that's not a good idea. Pushing pawns near your king weakens your king's position. You do it if you absolutely have to, but you don't just do it willingly. So he felt that he thought that me playing me playing a5 was worse for him than him playing a5 himself to defend his king's position. So he played a5. We played knight e2, and the idea of this has a couple reasons. Um, this is another really key moment here, another instructional moment. A lot of times when your opponent has a pawn on c6 or f6, when your knight is on c3 or f3, it really prohibits that knight from moving around very much. Um, because it controls those key squares. So that c6 pawn is controlling b5 and d5, which makes this knight a lot worse on this square. So if we can reroute this knight to a better position, like f5 for instance, if we can put our knight, just magically move our knight to f5, that would be ideal. Or even h5. h5 is attacking a bishop, the pawn. It's just much stronger there than it is on c3. So I moved 92. And the other idea I had here was now I can push this pawn. So before, our c2 pawn couldn't move at all. And if we can start creating a pawn storm on the queen side, we can start getting towards his king. So I play 92 with the intention of maybe going knight g3 or maybe playing c3. Kind of a dual purpose move. He plays rook g8 here. And here I back up with queen, which was a bit of an inaccuracy because he can't actually move this bishop, um, because this pawn just falls. This pawn falls, and then the bishop doesn't really have anywhere to go anyway. So I didn't actually have to move this queen, but oop, I didn't do that. Um, it's always, especially in a blitz game, it is a bit it's a little scary when your opponent has a rook lined up against your queen. 'Cause obviously, we don't want to trade a rook for a queen. Um, so, uh, natural instinct for me was just to move back. He plays knight f7 here, so he's trying to reroute the knight to g5. So from h6, the knight's not really doing much. It can't go to f5, it can't go to g4. The rook's taking up g8, which is where it came from anyway. We don't want to put it back there. So we gotta find a good square for this knight. That's what he's thinking. So he plays knight f7 with the idea of going to knight g5 or even playing bishop h6. So if he has the option to trade off his bad bishop, this bishop is terrible right now. This bishop is only looking at, it's defending one pawn. It can go to f8 and it can go to h6. Our bishop has this entire diagonal. It's looking at this pawn. It's controlling many more squares, many more key squares too, than his bishop. So if you guys get an opportunity to exchange off one of your bad pieces for one of your opponent's good pieces, that's something you gotta be looking out for. So that I think that's one of his ideas he's gonna play next. And there it is. He plays bishop h6. Um, we continue with our plan. We want to go b4 if we can to try to pawn storm him. He takes, we take back, and he plays knight g5 here. So at first glance, it looks like this move doesn't do anything, right? It's he's attacking this h3 pawn. Well, that's defended by g2, right? Wrong. It's not. Because once this knight moves, this pawn is actually pinned to the king. You say, why is that? It doesn't make any sense. Why would it be pinned? Well, the idea is once this knight moves, this rook is staring down the pawn and the king. And we can't take the knight back, otherwise we would lose our king, which is just not an option in chess. So this pawn is actually under attack right now. Um, and you might think, well, we can take back the queen, right? No, we can't do that either. Because if you take with the knight, we take back with the queen. Just show you. Let's say I just made some random move. Check. And we take back. He takes back with the rook now. We still can't take back because our pawn is into our king. This rook is a very strong piece right now. So there's a little bit of tactic here. So for that reason, I play king h2 to get out of that pin. Now this pawn is pinned to the king. So, but there's no tactics against this pawn right now. So we're safe for the time being. He plays rook h6 to try to double up on this file. We go b4, continue with our plan. Takes, takes. And this was actually a mistake by me because he can actually just take here and I can't really get in very fast. My idea was I was gonna go a5, but then if I go a5, he just takes it again. And these pawns are actually super strong. His king has very little defenders, but I have no way of really getting to his king. So that was a bit of a mistake by me. But luckily, he didn't actually take the second time. He doubled up. I took my opportunity to take here because I knew if I could take and open up his king, that's ideal. And he doesn't really have any tactics against this pawn. He could try to sacrifice this. Um, he can go to this position where he sacrifices everything for my queen. But this is just better for us. We have a knight, and two rooks, for a queen and a pawn, basically. And that's just gonna be better for us. And this pawn's falling too. He's got to recapture here. We're gonna be getting in. This is no good for him. So we take this opportunity to capture. He plays c5. And instead of taking back, I added more pressure to the e file. So I'd love to take this with the rook. So this pawn again, this pawn on his side now is actually pinned to his king because this rook is staring down the king and the pawn. So what does he do here? He triples. So he's gonna try now he's gonna try to sack because now he's got four attackers and we only have two defenders, which means that he's gonna win that exchange basically. So I took the pawn with check, so he's got to move the king somewhere. If he moves it to these files, I'm gonna take this pawn with check, and this is just gonna be a mate. There's checkmate here. So he really had to go either to a8 or a7. He chose to go to a7. And here, instead of allowing the sacrifices on h3, I just went ahead and played knight to g1 because this knight really wasn't doing much anyway. It wasn't doing much on e2, so why not have it become more useful and defend our h3 pawn so there's no sacrifices there. This pawn is weak forever. We don't need to take this right away. That's not important to us right now. He plays rook h4. Um, Honestly, I don't know. I guess maybe he was trying to sacrifice on e5. I'm not sure what this move does. I don't think this does much. We go ahead and take it this pawn. Now this is very, very dangerous for his king. Uh, he's in dire straits here. Actually, the computer said that it's force mate, so he's going to lose this. If we find the right sequence of moves, obviously, right? Um, so he takes here, kind of a desperado move. Um, and we take back. Um, and he plays this move, f3, which is actually pretty tricky. Especially right now, I have 26 seconds left, so it's never over till it's over. That's why you guys always gotta be looking out for stuff. This you might be like, oh, this is just a free night, right? This is a free night. I'm just gonna take this. Wrong. he's coming in now. This gets rid of our defender. Our G2 pawn was defending our knight. So if we take his knight, he takes our knight. And now he's getting in with his pieces. And here, he's actually checkmating us. It's the game is totally flipped. Here, uh, rook check. King has to go here. Rook G2. If we go here, it's just mate after Queen G1, Queen G1. And if I go here, he just goes up here, I believe. Yeah. And then we have F4, and this is checkmate. So it's that easy for the game to completely turn. Um, but you gotta be very careful all the time. You can't. There's no move you can take for granted in chess. So this was a good try by him. I just back up though. I don't need to take that knight. He can't. I mean, if he sacrifices queen, we're gonna take back, and then we're just gonna go to G2. That's nothing. So now it's basically over for him. Um, I think actually in here he just resigned the game because there is unstoppable mate. I think he might. I don't know. Maybe he'd go back or something. But here we just play. What does Peter wants to do? Rook A6 check. Ah, yeah. This is brutal. So if he takes, then it's mate, and if he goes back, this is gonna be checkmate soon. He's got a queen here, but yeah, at this point, it's game over. So I just wanted to show you that game to show you that it's never over till it's over, especially for one. We're up a whole rook here, but we could have lost the game in one move here by just taking this knight. So always keep an eye out for checks and captures and never let your guard down in chess. It's easy for the tides to turn. So hopefully this game was instructive to you guys. Hope you find it had some value. Let me know in the comments if you like this kind of video. If you have any recommendations for me in the future, what you guys want to see. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you. Peace.